Well, it's all the agencies of the federal government, starting with the cabinet agencies, the Treasury Department, all the way down to the independent, so-called independent agencies like the SEC.
And what do you think has happened here?
Well, over time, Congress has made laws that are broader and broader in scope. They're not very restrictive, and the courts have allowed these agencies to make rules that go beyond what Congress has actually authorized. So that over the last 25 years, for example, every year these agencies have made more than 3,000 rules and regulations. If you want this in kind of political terms, one of the things that Donald Trump talked about a lot on the stump was deregulation. And I think most people in the financial community and the economics community interpreted this as economic regulation. But I think the people who were voting for Trump were thinking that there's just too much coming out of Washington that affects their lives, and they have not voted for or approved. And so I think we have to get control of this in some way. And the book suggests that the best way to get control of it is for the courts to step in and start interpreting the statutes that these agencies are operating under more effectively.
Well, so that was the debate I was going to have with you. You talk about the court stepping in, and I would ask, why has Congress failed to step in? If, in fact, these departments are making up their rules that go far beyond what Congress has given them permission to do, you would think that Congress should be holding them to account.
You certainly would. And in fact, that's what the framers of the Constitution assumed, that Congress would be very interested in retaining all its powers. That is not how it's happened. For a variety of reasons discussed in the book, Congress has allowed these agencies a lot of freedom. We know that there's legislation introduced in Congress each year. Several pieces of legislation have passed the House of Representatives in the past few years, but they don't get to the Senate and they don't go beyond the Senate.
But do you think that there's a hidden motive here, which is to say that one of the reasons that Congress has not held them to account is because, in fact, this is what they actually want?
Absolutely. I agree, and I think that's in the book. What is happening is that Congress is proposing and passing very general legislation where they don't actually have to make the tough decisions themselves, and they're handing those tough decisions over to the agencies. And we have to remember that the agencies are made up of people living all around the Washington area. They are not the American people. And the agencies are issuing rules and regulations that have their priorities rather than the priorities of the American people.
You write about a number of these regulations gone or run amok or gone awry or whatever phrase you want to. What is the worst example of it?
Well, I think the worst example, the easiest to understand, is what happened under Title IX of the Education Act, which was adopted in 1972. And what that said simply was schools have to make educational resources available to both sexes. And that has been used by the Education Department to create an entire system of regulation of sexual harassment, which is student to student, having nothing to do with the school. But they force the schools into positions where they have to have certain kinds of procedures where there has been alleged sexual harassment. They've defined sexual harassment, and then punishments under sexual harassment. All of those things are too far.
Given our interest here at this table in business and investment, are there particular parts of the code, if you will, or laws that you think would have a significant impact on investors if they were brought to the court?
Sure. Lots of things that are adopted by the agencies, by the SEC, by the Treasury Department, and other major departments of the government have political and economic consequences. They are, right now, the agencies are the ones that largely have the power to determine how the economy responds and the kinds of things that companies have to do in order to comply with these rules. So, sure, everything that they do has an economic component.
Final question for you, and this goes to this idea of the deep state, I guess, to some degree, but who's really in charge here? Given all the work you've now done on this book, especially when it comes to our economy, is the president and his administration in charge? To some degree, you could argue that some of these departments fit right under or are part of the administration. Therefore, the things that they're doing should be in line with the president. Well, the president really has no ability to affect this because if there are 3,000 rules every year, and there have been for every year for the last 25, over 100,000 rules, it's not possible for the president or his administration to affect those. He or she will only have an ability to touch a very, very few, 3 to 5 big rules in any year. The rest of the rules roll out over the public, and the public has to comply with them. So the president is not in charge. Congress is not able to stop it. The agencies proceed every year to make more and more regulations based on laws that have been passed in the past, and the only agency that can stop this, I think, is the courts. And it happens that the Supreme Court, in its new composition, has an interest in this. And I think that we will see a lot more restrictions on what the agencies do coming out of this court.